Good morning. Today we're having our last class of community health, and we're talking about the epidemiology of infectious disease. And we need to have some concepts about infectious disease epidemiology. First, we need to know the major difference. We have first a case can also be an exposure. Then we have a subclinical infection influenced by epidemiology. Then we have the contact parents and play role. And then we have the immunity. And sometimes there is a need for urgency. So, what is an infection disease epidemiology? First, epidemiology deals with one population. We have a risk and then a case. We need to identify the causes, and then we have the infectious disease epidemiology, that is two or more populations. A case is a risk factor, and the cause is often known. What we mean about the two or more populations? First, we have the humans, and then we have the infectious agents like helminths, bacteria, fungi, and viruses. Also, we have the vectors. There is the mosquito, snails, black fly, and the bacteria. And then we have the animals, dogs, sheep, mice, and pigs. What is a case? Is a case a risk factor? We have an infection in one person can be transmitted to others. As we can see in this image, we have a first case and then the disease is spread. The cause is often known is that an infectious agent is a necessary cause. And what we use epidemiology for? First, we need to identify the causes of new emergent infections. Then we use it for surveillance of infection diseases. We also use it for identification of the source of outbreaks and also to study the routes of transmission and natural history of the infections. Then we identify the new interventions. And what is an infection disease? An infectious disease is caused by an infectious agent. It's also called communicable disease. We have the transmission directly or not from an infected person. And also we have the transmissible diseases that the transmission goes through unnatural routes, for example, from an infected person. We have some concepts that first are infection. Infections are often subclinical. That is infection versus infectious disease. And also we have the non-communicable disease. That is where there are no virus or bacteria involved. For example, diabetes. It's important also to know that some pathogens cross the placenta. For example, the protozoa from toxoplasmosis, bacteria from syphilis, some viruses like cytomegalovirus and RNA viruses like the HIV. Eh, it's also important to know the timeline for the infection. First, we have the dynamics of the infectiousness. We need a susceptible host. We have the infection, the presence of the infection. Then we have a latent period, an infection period, and then non-infectious. The dynamics of the disease. First, we have a susceptible host, the infection, the incubation period, asymptomatic period, and no disease. In the transmissions, we need to know the cases, index or the first case identified, primary, the case that brings the infection into a population, secondary, infected by a primary case, and tertiary, infected by a secondary case. So we have though these are the susceptible. Some persons are immune. We have the primary, secondary, and tertiary. We also have the epidemiological triad. The disease is the result of force with a dynamic system consisting of the agent, the environment, and the host. All three must be present for the person to get the disease. What factors influence the disease transmission? First, the agent. What is the degree or level of infectivity, pathogenicity, virulence, and survival? In the environment, we have the weather, the housing, geographic areas, occupational settings, air quality, and food. And in the house, we have the age, sex, genotype, behavior, nutritional status, and health status. In this epidemiological triad, we also have some related concepts. First, infectivity is the ability to infect. We can calculate it from the number of infected persons with the number of susceptible hosts per 100. Pathogenicity is the ability to cause the disease. Also, we can calculate it with the number of clinical disease by the number of the infected persons. Virulence is the ability to cause death. We have the numbers of deaths on top the numbers of the disease. Are all the dependent on the host factors. The predispositions to infections, we have the host factors that are gender, genetics, weather, nutrition, stress, and sleep, smoking, the stomach acidity, and the hygiene. Also, it's important to you to know the iceberg concept of infection. First, we have to the exposure through the infection. Then we have the infection with clinical illness. Then we have the moderate illness and clinical to severe disease. In the Koch postulate, he talks about that the same organism is present in every case. It is isolated or growth in a pure culture. The disease can be reproduced in healthy animals after the infection of the pure culture, and the identical pathogen is re-isolated from the experimental animals. So here we have the Koch postulate. First, we have the germ that must be present in every case of the disease. Then we have the disease subjects, the germs is not found in healthy subjects. We need to the microbe or the bacteria. We put it in a culture, and then we isolate the germ, and then we need to do an injection of this germ in a healthy host, and this mouse develop the same disease that the first subject. And in the ecological factors in infections, we have some altered environments like air conditioning, changes in food production and handle it, intensive intensive husbandry with antibiotics, deep freeze fast food industry. Then we have the the climate change through global warming, deforestation, ownership of exotic pets, air travel and exotic journeys, and an increased use of immunosuppressive and antibiotics. In the infection disease process, we have the direct tissue invasion, toxins present of a latent infection, altered susceptibility to drugs, immune suppression, and immune activation. We have some important concepts like endemic, pandemic, and epidemic. Endemic is the transmission, is when the transmission occurs, but the numbers of cases remains constant. Is the first. Then we have endemic, when the number of cases increase, and then we have pandemic, when the epidemics occurs at several continents. For example, a global epidemic. In the level of disease occurrence, we have an sporadic, that is occasional cases occurring at irregular intervals. Then we have endemic, a persistent occurrence with a low and moderate level. Hyperendemic, persistently high level of occurrence. Epidemic or outbreak occurs in the excess of expected level for a given time of period. And pandemic is when the endemic spreads over the several countries and continents. And it is important for you to remember that you must be aware of the chronogram, and you must submit the activities on time. Also, you need to do the evaluations in the specific time.